All right, before we get started, and I know for those of you who are new in the STP, I'm going to be throwing you into an advanced course, which you might want to just put your hands over your ears so that because I'm going to be talking about some very important things that have happened this week, and just want to give an update to all the folks who might be here. So, first, I'll explain to you that self-determination program has in its current form has been around for a long time. The law was passed in 2013, and and it's sort of it became statewide in 2021, and a lot of the rules have been changing over the years. And there was an agreement in the state of California just yesterday on even more changes to the SDP. And so, for those of you who are really new to the SDP, you might be confused about some of this, but once you complete our whole think outside the box, it will make a lot more sense to you. But I felt because of the timeliness of it, I still wanted to talk to you about it. And I really appreciate those of you putting things in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and try not to get too technical. So this is the self-determination law that you're going to see here. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you. And I'm just going to go over some of the most important parts of it for you, okay? So I hope is this the right document? This is not the right document. I feel like, is this the right it? Oh, no, this is correct. In terms by doing all the following. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. Sorry for confusing everybody. Okay. So you're going to see the things that are in red are the things I'm going to be talking to you about. So, and I'm only going to talk to you about the things that are the most important for you to know today. So first of all, this agreement is between the state legislature and the governor and the governor's representative, which is Department of Developmental Services, or DDS. And you're going to see them in this language called just the department. And so this section basically says that by March 1st, 2027, and we're hoping it happens way before that, that the state of California, through the department, will be developing a set of guidelines, processes, procedures that will make the experience of being in the self-determination program consistent across the state. Right now, what we're hearing is that it's done one way in one regional center and a different way in a different regional center. And even within a regional center, sometimes it's different. And so this is going to require the department to set out very, very specific rules in these following areas. In enrollment, so for people going in, like many of you here today for the very first time, in how individual budgets are developed, in spending plans and the kinds of rules around what can go into a spending plan, how financial management services work, and access to transition supports, which are those people that you can hire that move you from the traditional system into the SDP. And that they're required, that all regional centers will be required to follow these new rules. And these new rules will not be made in a vacuum. They are required, or the department is required to consult with their what's called lived experience advisory group, which is the new name of their consumer advisory group. You should know DDS is moving away from using the term consumer, which I'm really happy about. And individuals and families, caregivers, advocates and associations, that would be DVU, service providers, regional centers, and the statewide self-determination advisory committee, which actually met yesterday. So moving along, so this is very good. And that language was part of a bill that DVU got passed last year that ended up getting vetoed by the governor. So we're happy that made it in. I'm still moving forward to the next section. Okay. So this next section where you're seeing in the letter K says that um, the regional center, you'll see in this underlined part here, that a regional center shall not prohibit the purchase of any service or support that is otherwise allowable under this section. So that means that if the participant is following all of the rules, that a regional center cannot make up their own rules. So it can't be that, well, in our regional center, we want to do it differently because so we're not allowing you to do A, B, or C because that's just our rules. Like that's not going to be allowed. All right. It should be obvious that that's the case, but we spelled it out. This next section is critically important for all of you to hear because many of you are not yet in the SDP. And this new rule is going to be going into effect very soon, probably before most of you have gone in to the SDP. Actually, if you are very close to going in, I'd suggest you get in, like literally get in now, because the directives that are going to come out on this section will happen in the next couple of months. And your budget is guaranteed to be smaller in 2 months than it would be if you went in today. All right. So, so what this says is that for the initial budget, so for your very first budget, as you're moving into the self-determination program, that your budget will be based on the most recently available 12 months of purchase of service authorizations. So I'm going to stop here and explain what that means. It's the way it has been going is that it's based on how much you've spent in the last 12 months. And then you would claim unmet need. And you're going to hear about this at next month's Think Outside the Box. And we actually postponed it because we wanted to wait for these new rules to go into effect to change our presentation. So the fact is that it's going to be based on the authorizations, and authorizations mean that you got a service in your IPP, an authorization document was sent to a service provider who agreed to take you on as a client, and you've agreed to get your service from that provider. So that's like a fully used service. But also it includes this next part, which is services authorized by the team, but not provided in a purchase of service authorization. So that means that you have agreed in your IPP team that, let's say, you'll be provided funding for a day program, but you're not actually going to use the day program. It's just a service just to make up your IPP your SDP budget amount. So that's good too. This is something that DVU fought for. And then they're going to subtract services paid for by the regional center outside of the self-determination program and one-time expenses. So these are things like the paid internship program is outside of the self-determination program. There's a whole list of those services. We're going to get to that in future months. Don't worry about that part yet. But here's something, so they had completely eliminated, the department, when they put forth this language, had completely eliminated anyone's ability to argue that you have unmet need. And you'll see that in this next section here, it's crossed out, that you can change the amount due to a change in the participant's circumstances or needs or resources that would result in a decrease or increase in the service expenditures, or the IPP team identifies prior needs or resources that were unaddressed in the IPP. So that those prior needs that were unaddressed, we shorthand and have been calling it unmet need. So they were going to get rid of it for everyone. And we were able to get the state to agree that the IPP team shall discuss unmet needs for participants with no or low purchases of services. So if somebody is walking in and they've never received a service before, or they're only getting like 4 hours a month of respite, that there needs to be a discussion on, our needs have not been met, and it's because of all of these reasons that our needs have not been met. There have been no appropriate services for myself because of the specific needs that I have. Now, you are still able to change your amount once you're in the program. You can adjust the amount of your budget if your circumstances, needs, or resources change. So what that means, so what's a circumstance change? It would be like you're moving out of your house or you're graduating out of school. Your needs would change. Let's say you're very sick and now you have different needs because you're sick. Or it could be your resources, meaning that um, you lost your private insurance and now you're going to Medi-Cal and Medi-Cal doesn't support certain things. So that's what those things mean. And we're going to go over that a lot more next month. But I just wanted you to see this. And the regional center is going to have to explain why in the IPP team anybody's budget was adjusted. So some of you who are in the SDP may be asking, well, what does that mean for me in my renewal years in my second, third, fourth, fifth year? We're not exactly sure yet because they are silent on that. And we're expecting to get some sort of direction from the department. What we think happens is that people will come in with the same budget amount that they had the previous year with the opportunity to adjust it if the participant's circumstances, needs, or resources had changed. That's what we think they're going to end up saying. All right. A couple more quick changes for everybody. Sorry, that's not such a major change. So I'm only going to go to major change. This is the big, we won on every argument we had, except for this one. And this is a bad one. So once you do your spending plan, when you want to change parts of your spending plan, it requires you to jump through many hoops at your regional center, even if you're just changing $100 between service codes. This provision makes it even worse. It makes it even worse because there were some regional centers who didn't require you to jump through lots of hoops. And they were letting you do that. Now it's not letting any regional services let you off the hook. Like basically it says that if you want to change or transfer any money, even a dollar between service codes and budget categories, it requires, and get this word here, approval of the regional center. Approval, even though they don't even approve the spending plan in the first place. They just review it. So obviously we have some really grave concerns about this. And they claim at the department that they are going to explain this more clearly so that it will not be a giant burden for people. But between now and when they actually explain it, I expect as of July 1st, which is next week, as of July 1st, regional centers are going to start tightening the ropes for everybody. So honestly, if you need a change now, like I try to get it in the next week because it's just going to be such a hassle to get an approval by the regional center for even a $10 change between service codes. And make sure, honestly, that you are using as few service codes as possible in your spending plan. All right. One final piece I wanted to go over with you. And this is where we had a very big win. So the department wanted in this section to ensure that that everything in your spending plan was required to be cost effective. And cost effective means to many regional centers the cheapest, but that's not actually what cost effective means. And so this is basically saying that your spending plan has to address the desired outcomes in the individual's IPP. So you are now going to have to draw a direct connection between what's in your IPP and every single item in your spending plan. And I believe that your spending plan is going to have to list that. So they might number the desired outcomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to have to put the number that it relates to. The fact that everyone has to use generic resources first, that's nothing new. or that they're eligible for federal financial participation. It means it has to be an approved service. That's also not new. And honestly, we've been talking about this first one all along. So the fact that the cost effectiveness is gone there, it's gone from there, is a really good thing. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing there and we're going to move on to our presentation. Oh, wait, I have one more set of announcements and I apologize. We're going to go on to our presentation first and are happy to answer any questions about this at the end. The other update I have for you, for those of you who've been following the federal congressional efforts to cut Medicaid, this has been a very bad week. The US Senate has put forth a set of proposals that are even worse than was passed in the House of Representatives. And the leadership is also saying that they're not going to get to go home for their July 4th recess, which actually begins tomorrow evening. They're not going to be able to go home until they finish the budget. And everybody wants to go home to be in their July 4th parades. And so we are unfortunately anticipating that there will be a budget with massive Medicaid cuts passed within a week. That is what many of us are anticipating. That doesn't mean you should stop your advocacy, especially if you live in key congressional districts like Orange County or Bakersfield, where there are members of Congress where we must continue to pressure. So please join DVU's mailing list and make sure you're on our mailing list to get all of our action alerts, because we're going to be sending out more information on this in the next day or two. So that, especially if you live in these key congressional districts. All right. So, I got all that out of the way, and now we're going to start the presentation on person-centered planning. Yes, Kaylee.
I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if I missed it, but did you announce the conference? Because there was questions in the chat.
Didn't.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, can you go ahead and share the slides? I'm not the slide, the flyers. So we are hosting two in-person SDP conferences in the coming months. The first one will be in Oakland, and it will be on September 11th in Oakland. And the second one will be in Los Angeles on November 19th. The entire theme is called Empowerment in Practice, and we will be talking about both self-determination and supported decision-making as key ways for people with disabilities to retain their autonomy and to be able to have choice and control over their lives. I can promise you that particularly the LA one is going to sell out really fast, probably the Oakland one as well. The Oakland one has already gone for sale, so you should be registering for that. We are not vendoring with any regional centers, folks, and we're not even particularly vendoring with FMSs. You can ask your FMS to pay for the conference with their credit card, and that works really well. We'll probably put the Los Angeles one for sale, the tickets for sale in the next month or so. And we will say, if you're on our mailing list, you'll be able to certainly get that information. Okay. And can you get it by email? If you are on our mailing list, we've already been sending it out by email. So just make sure you're on the DVU mailing list, okay? Beth wants me to highlight the STP rec. I actually don't even know when it is, but I can tell you that there's an STP resource fair this Sunday for Westside Regional Center clients and their families. And I know that there's, and Beth just put it in the chat, the one in July in Orange County. So a lot of different regional centers. Make sure you're on your regional center mailing list to see if there's any local programming that are available to you in your particular area. Okay. All right, so let's get started. Thanks for reminding me of that, Kaylee. Let's get started. All right, so today's presentation is part of our Think Outside the Box series. And we did the first one back in February on transition supports into the SDP. You can find that recording on our YouTube page. And we then took a break for several months because we were really focused on the Medicaid cuts, and now we're getting back to this series. So can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, I should mention that these slides are available also in Spanish and in Korean. And the way that you find the slide that you want of your language, are we sharing them in the other languages yet? Because I'm not seeing them.
No, we didn't have enough people to share all the slides, but I put them all in the chat.
Okay. All right. So if you go into the chat and you click on the language of your choice, you will be able to see the slides. All right. All right. I actually, if we could at least get the Spanish up, because I know we're going to end up, people are going to want to see them. Because they like to watch it and see the slides at the same time. So if we could get the Spanish up, that would be great. And you can click at the very top of your screen and pick either the English slide or the Spanish slide. All right. So you'll see that this is the roadmap for getting into the self-determination program. So we did the transition supports. Today, we are talking about person-centered planning. Next month, we'll be talking about budget development. Step 5 will be, so that's July. In August, we'll be talking about developing your spending plans. In September, we'll be talking about the FMS. And then in October, we'll be talking about transitioning into the program. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, go ahead, Tina.
What is person-centered planning? First of all, in traditional system, it's about what is available. But person-centered planning is about your hopes and your dreams, not about what's available. Oh, where did...
There it goes. There it goes.
It's about what's possible. It helps people to live better lives with support to do the things that are most important to them. It includes things that cost money, but it also includes things that don't.
And yeah, and I'm just going to reiterate about what's available versus what's possible. When you are in the traditional system and you go to the IPP, the IPP team says to you, if you ask for something that regional centers don't normally provide, they say, well, I'm sorry, that's just not available. That service is not available. And then if you find a service that you want, you say, well, I'd like that service to be conducted in this way. I'm sorry, that's not available. Or I want this particular service provider. I'm sorry, they're not available. So everything is about what's available. And in the self-determination program and through person-centered planning, you are supposed to be thinking about all your hopes and dreams and what is possible. Okay, next slide, please.
With person-centered planning, the person directs the process as much as possible. So that means if you're able to say, I want these people at my meeting and I want this person to help me run it and I want that person to take notes, then you should do that. If you're not as able, then other people in your circle of support can help you decide those things. But for the most part, as much as you're able, you should do yourself. Person-centered planning supports persons in defining their goals, preferences, and visions for the future. So it's about what you want and how you see your future. It emphasizes the person's strengths, values, and cultural identity by collaborating with their circle of support. Or in other words, it focuses on your strengths, not your weaknesses. It focuses on what you want, what's important to you, and what's culturally, what you culturally identify with by including the people that matter to you and letting them help you. The plan changes as the person changes. It's not static. It's not a do it once and you're done. A person-centered plan changes with you. We actually, on my person-centered plan, we update it every year. We don't write a new one, but we do change a lot of things because, let's face it, life's about change. Nothing stays the same. So the doctor I have this year might not be the doctor I have next year. So you have to go through it every year and fix the things that changed. Not to mention that sometimes what you like this year won't be what you like next year or what you want. It's about setting goals and the supports needed to meet them. And it's okay to think big. You can think outside the box. You don't have to limit yourself. If one of your goals is climbing mountains, then you can put that as a goal, even if everybody says, oh, you can't do that. Well, yeah, it's what I want, so let's figure out how I can do that. I can do anything with the right supports. But that's the trick. You have to have the right support. I have a friend who went skydiving. He doesn't talk. He can't walk. But he went skydiving because that was his goal. There's a lot of stories like that. And the person-centered plan helps to inform your individual program plan or IPP. So that's important too.
So before we do the next slide, Kaylee, do you want to share the Spanish slides?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. We're just going to get this all set up so that it doesn't disturb you. So many of you may now be seeing the Spanish slides. The way to go back to seeing the English slides is look at the top of your screen and click on the button that says presentation slides. And then you'll be able to go back to the English.
And I just want to apologize because usually I'm watching the chat and doing presentation, but it's too much for me today. So I have the chat turned off. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worry, because we're saving the chat for later and we'll go back and ask. We're not going to interrupt with questions yet.
Okay.
Does that, if somebody is having an issue with finding the right language of their slides, throw a question in the chat and Kaylee will help you. I also want to say, because there's been like 5 questions about this every time we have these questions, how do we view this later? All of our presentations are on our YouTube channel. Feel free to subscribe to it so that you find out when we put new videos in there. In fact, you can find our videos from years ago, so you can go back in time and see seeing how things work. Then,
Judy,
yeah,
there's an easy way to figure out the English slides from the Spanish slides. If you want the English slides, it's the purple square. And if you want the Spanish slides, it's the orange square.
I just want to make sure that the slides that people are actually seeing on YouTube are the correct slides. So, could someone just confirm that for me, please? Because the fact that the second set of slides may be the slides that are available.
I think that they're showing up in Spanish because I'm recording and I'm the one sharing in Spanish.
No, that's not why. It's always the second set of slides that are that get preferred. So sorry about the technical difficulties. I want both of you to stop sharing your slides. And then Kayla, you share the Spanish ones first, and then Eric will come in with the okay, then Eric, you can go ahead and share your slides. Okay, and that should have changed it on online, but let me know if that didn't work. Okay. All right. All right, so people are seeing the English slides. Great. Okay, go ahead, Tina, you have the next slide.
I don't think, oh, there we are. The values of person-centered planning, first of all, are to presume confidence. It's better to assume somebody can than to make the mistake of thinking that they can't, because people tend to be what you expect them to be. So if you expect them to be incapable, they're not going to prove you wrong. So let people guide their own process as much as possible and make choices. And yes, even people who cannot speak can tell you what they want. You just have to pay closer attention. You have to offer them alternative ways to communicate with you. Sometimes use pictures or just watch to see when they smile. Um, it focuses on your strengths. So you want to highlight what the person does well, not what they can't do. It's the opposite of the IPP. The IPP focuses on what you can't do. The person-centered plan focuses on what you are good at. Remember that behavior is communication too. If somebody shuts down that normally talks, that's an indication that something's wrong and didn't go the way they expect. And if somebody gets upset, it doesn't mean they're misbehaving. It means they're trying to tell you that they're not happy about something. Everybody communicates in their own way and should have the right to make choices, but you have to listen more carefully sometimes than other times. Meaningful community life means that everyone should live and participate in their community, not just in programs for people with disabilities. We don't need to be locked away in closets and attics anymore. It's okay for us to be in the world. The world needs to get used to us. If the world doesn't see us, they'll never learn to be respectful. If they don't get to ask questions, they never learn to accept, because sometimes people are afraid of what they don't understand. So let people ask questions. Let people see you. You're okay. You belong in this world too. And respect cultural diversity. Different cultures have different beliefs, and you have to remember to consider family, religious, ethnic, and racial backgrounds. Some cultures are are less forward than others, and we have to love each other just the way we are. Does that explain it good,
That was
Judy?
great. That was
Okay.
great. All right, next slide, please. All right, there are key steps in the process of person-centered planning that many people don't actually do these steps, which means that your person-centered planning is not going to be successful. So the first thing is pre-planning, where you're going to talk about the logistics of where you're having the meeting, how you're doing the meeting, and the topics you want to discuss. Then you actually have a planning meeting with your circle of support. Then the next step is to write up a plan in a document. And then finally, we do the follow-up to review the progress and adjust the plan. So we're going to go into each of these steps in more detail. So pre-planning. So pre-planning is critical because it is it basically provides the framework of who's going to be there and how the whole meeting is going to work. I can tell you that if you look up person-centered planning anywhere in the world, pre-planning is, everybody will say pre-planning is more important than the actual planning meeting. And for many of you who have had your IPPs already with the regional center, they're supposed to be using the principles of person-centered planning with your IPP. I'm going to say both Tina and I have had our IPPs, and neither of us had any pre-planning, and both of the IPPs were not at all person-centered. So you should be requesting a pre-planning meeting with the regional center, and these are the kinds of things you should be discussing with them. So the first thing is when and where. Even with the regional center, you should be able to say in your IPP, I want the I want my meeting, my planning meeting, to be on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at the Denny's in my neighborhood, because that's where I feel most comfortable. And if they say no, then you request to speak to their manager, because they are required to use person-centered planning principles. But for the PCP, for the person-centered plan, which is what you're using in the self-determination program, you shouldn't be using it at a time where the individual might be very tired or the individual might be very stressed. You shouldn't be having it at a place with lots of loud noises where there's going to be lots of distractions.
Or lighting that's uncomfortable.
Mhm. Perfect. My son knows that mid-morning, like around 11:30, is the right thing for his body. And we also know that he wants it to be at home, and he wants it to be, he wants there to be lots of breaks. Like every 30 minutes, he's going to need a break. And he may be like, after the first 30 minutes, I'm done. And so therefore that's it. You got to reconvene in another time.
Hey, Judy, I don't want to confuse people, so I want to clarify something. Yes, the IPP should be done with the same pre-planning ideas, but I wouldn't expect the regional center to be as willing to make adaptations. They're not going to meet with you on a Sunday. They're going to tell you it has to be during their hours of operation, but they should still let you choose the place and the people.
So I can tell you that I got my son's service coordinator to show up to a meeting on a Sunday morning.
You are an amazing advocate, and I doubt that I
I,
could have the same success.
yep.
I doubt that a lot of us would have the same. I just don't want to get people's hopes up too high.
Yeah. So we had a Sunday morning, and it was at a restaurant nearby, and it was an amazing experience. So feel free to request it. And if they can't do it, say, well, who else can? If that's the only time that works for you, if you have flexibility on different days, show them that you have flexibility. But if literally you have a full-time job, if the parents have full-time jobs and the only time the parents are available and cannot take off work is a Sunday morning, that's when it's going to have to be. Yeah, Beth was just saying she did hers. Her son said his favorite restaurant. So the topics are a really important thing about there's a different, shows the big difference between person-centered planning and the IPPs. In person-centered planning, the person can decide what they want to discuss, but more importantly, what they don't want to discuss. So a person may say, I do not want to talk about my weight. Like, that is off limits. I don't want anybody telling me I need to lose weight. Like that, no. And that would be the person-centered plan. At an IPP, like, it's kind of hard to tell the regional center what you don't want to talk about. And they're going to bring up your health, and they're going to say, what are you doing to fix this and this? Because IPPs are more deficit focused and PCPs are more strengths focused. But in a PCP, the individual, the person, can decide what they want to and what they don't want to talk about. Who gets invited? This is another big difference. In a PCP, the person should invite the people that they trust and people who can help them meet their goals. In an IPP, the service coordinator has to be there. I can tell you that back in the day when we had a Sunday morning PCP for my son, or IPP for my son, we had this service coordinator we'd had for years whom we loved. Right now, my son doesn't even know his service coordinator, so they're not invited to his person-centered plan.
I've never had my regional center service coordinator at my person-centered plan, because my person-centered plan is mine.
Right.
It's mine. So
Right.
I bring in the people that I want to be there. And I want to say one thing. It's kind of important. It's more than kind of important. It's important for the person who you're planning with and for, to be able to privately tell you who they want at their meeting. It shouldn't be something that they have to do in front of everyone. Because I'm telling you, if I don't feel comfortable with somebody coming, I'm probably not going to say that in front of them. I will say that quietly to someone I trust. I'll say, I don't really feel comfortable with them being there, but I don't want to hurt their feelings because I don't like hurting people's feelings. But it's not about them,
Mm-hmm.
it's about me. So
Mm-hmm.
make sure when you ask your child who they want at their meeting, you do it in a place at a time when they can tell you honestly how they feel. And at the same time, you need to be open to who they want to come. If you and your spouse are divorced and your child says, I want daddy to be there, guess what? Daddy needs to be there.
Oh, that's such an excellent point. I've never even thought about before, Tina. I can tell you that for my son's person-centered plan, um, my son is not very verbal, and so but he can read. And so we wrote down, but you can do it with photos too. We wrote down the names of all of the people that we thought he would want to come, and he would point a yes or no on each of them. And it was very surprising to me who he said yes to and who he said no to. I would never have predicted it. So you have to give them an option no matter how they communicate. Um, Facilitator and note taker. So this is why I'm doing this slide as opposed to Tina, because I'm a parent of a regional center client, and I'm a pretty good expert on person-centered planning and on the self-determination program, and I would never ever lead my son's person-centered plan ever because I am too close to it. I need to be there in that circle as my son's mom, not as my son's facilitator. So when I hear parents saying, we don't need to do a person-centered plan, I know my kid better than anybody else. Well, that's probably true. You know your kid better than other people. You don't know your kid better than your kid knows himself or herself, right? So it is really, really critical you bring in a third person. Now, we talked at our last meeting, I know last February, about who that person might be, but I just want to say that that person does not have to be like some super duper expert in person-centered planning if you trust them. So I've often encouraged people like, has there been a special education teacher in your life who really knows your child? You also want to make sure they know your community. There are lots of people who are hiring independent facilitators who live 500 miles away from their area and who know nothing about the resources that exist in your community. You need to hire somebody who knows only you, not only you, but also um, your neighborhood.
And please remember the importance of siblings. Siblings are often our best advocates. I mean, I know growing up, it was my brother that took care of me most of the time.
Great. So the facilitator, you need to be very smart about who that person is and not just pick somebody off of a list. And then I would have a different person who's taking notes if that's possible. Because that way the facilitator can really focus on ensuring the inclusion of the individual to direct their own plan as much as they can. And you have someone else, a friend, somebody else in the circle who's willing to write it on a big post-it note, so that everybody can be on the same page, literally. Accommodations, you also want to make sure that in advance you've arranged for any accommodations the individual needs, whether it's assistive technology, you want to make sure that iPad is charged up. If there's visual supports needed, photographs, if there's breaks, like my son needs a break all the time, or any kind of special seating that the individual might prefer. Also arrange for language interpreters, whether it's ASL interpretation or whether it's Spanish interpretation, if there are people who speak multiple languages in your meeting. And also make sure you understand cultural considerations, because it's critical that you understand what the culture is of that individual person or that family. So I'm going to just tell you a very quick story that was told to me by Sally Burton Hoyle, who has facilitated over 30,000 person-centered plans, and is the expert in the country on this issue. She's in Michigan, and she has led my son's person-centered plan several times. And what she tells this really funny story. Well, it's funny, sort of funny. So she was working with an adult who she did pre-planning with the adult to say, who do you want and who do you not want? And the individual was nonverbal, but was able to communicate in specific ways of who they wanted. And they very specifically said they did not want this staff that he had. For whatever reason, he did not want that staff member to be at the planning meeting. And lo and behold, somebody else invited that staff to the planning meeting, and that guy shows up. And the first thing that Sally does at all of her planning meetings, which is amazing, is, are you happy with everybody who's here? And if there's someone who you're not happy with, can you communicate that to me? And this man, who did not speak, he got up and he sat down on top of this staff member. So everybody thought, oh, isn't that cute? He's sitting on his lap. And then he peed all over the guy's lap. That was the way he communicated that he did not want this man at his planning meeting. And Sally's response was not, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. It was like, please stand up and leave the meeting. He has communicated what he wants. I'll tell another quick story that Sally tells me. She has the best stories. She was doing pre-planning with this individual, and he was telling her, a different individual, and he was telling her that his dream in life is to be an auto mechanic. Of course, this man did not have any skills to be an auto mechanic, but he had one of these special interests in this. And he would walk down the street from his house and stare across the street at an auto body shop or an auto parts store, or whatever it was, something related to automobiles. And he would stare at them and he would look and he would be so happy to just watch what they were doing. And then he would walk home. So Sally heard this story from this man, and she got permission to go over to the auto mechanic there to say, you know, I'm working with this man and he is very fond of the work you do. And he goes, oh yeah, I see him there all the time. And she said, would you be willing to come to his person-centered plan? And she's like, you'll get a free meal out of it. And he's like, sure, I'm happy to. So the guy shows up to the person-centered plan. He wasn't part of the circle of support. He wasn't close to this man. Turns out the guy's like, I'm all in. This is so great. And I'm going to give this man an apprenticeship. And the man eventually got a job working there. So this is why it's important to think outside the box. Who can be at my meeting that can be really helpful to help me meet my goals? And some people say a lot. I have a very small circle. I don't have many people in my life. And so one of the jobs of your facilitator is to help you expand your circle to make sure that you are increasing the number of people that are in your life. Okay, next slide. I think this is you, Tina, right? No, it's me. Never mind. Sorry. So the planning meeting. So the only requirement for a planning meeting is that the participant directs the process to the best of their ability. And I'm going to show you a little movie at the end of the slideshow of a person-centered plan that my son had a few years ago. You'll see the way Sally was doing it, and you'll see the way Sally includes him. So you can see that. So when I say this is the process, this is one way. This does not have to be your way, okay? But this is one way of doing a planning meeting, is to start with strengths. one of the things that Sally always does at her planning meetings is she starts with everybody has to introduce themselves because, for at least at my son's meetings, there's people who didn't know each other. And then she asks them this question: what surprises you about Josh? My son's name is Josh. What surprises you about Josh? And it's incredible to hear what people answer when you ask that question. First of all, it's always strength based because it's not like somebody would answer what surprises you as well. Well, Josh can't do anything. Like, that's not gonna, because most people are not presuming he can. So all of a sudden, the surprise is that he can do lots of things. So we get some really incredible answers out of that question. But that doesn't have to be the only question. It can be like, what are 3 things that you admire about the individual? And then you keep a list of that. And you go back and refer to that list of those items that people admire. So it should have an opening question that really focuses on the strengths of that individual. Then you want to move on to the goals. So these are not goals like you see in IEPs, where Joshua will respond to a greeting 4 out of 6 times with an 80% success rate when prompted. I mean, these were literally his goals when he was in school, which is why he left school early. They are goals that are focused on hopes and dreams. So at my son's first person-centered plan when he was 15 years old, he's now 28. The big thing that he wanted, his big hope in his life, was to spend more time with his grandpa. That did not cost any money, just like Tina said. It was like we never knew that that was important to him. And so out of that PCP meeting, we said, because grandpa was there, can Josh come have lunch with you? He lived in one of these kind of independent living senior homes. Can he come have dinner with you every Monday? And of course, grandpa was thrilled with this. And that was put in his person-centered plan. It cost nothing, nothing at all.
Sometimes people don't even know that their hopes and dreams are when they first get into the self-determination program. It's important to let them explore the world. Take them out. Let them see what's going on, what kind of things are available. If you think they might like art classes, go take them to art classes. Not necessarily, you don't have to be in the class to go and see what it looks like. Take them to see what happens at a dojo. Maybe they want to take some kind of martial arts, or maybe take them to the park and they point at a bicycle and they want to ride a bicycle. Maybe something you haven't thought of before. We don't learn in a box. Take us outside. Let us see what's available and let us learn, because like I know when I lived in boarding care, like I had no idea what I wanted because I never really got to go anywhere except for the Dollar Tree.
Always important. So after you think about the hopes and dreams, you start to brainstorm and individualize ideas. So maybe the brainstorming is, I keep using my son as an example because my son has given me permission to talk about his person-centered planning processes. My son loves 2 things in the world: anything Disney and anything related to books, particularly Dr. Seuss books. But libraries, he loves to go to libraries and he loves to go to Disneyland or to see Disney movies. And so, we knew that his hopes and dreams were going to be in that area. But then we talked about things like, you want to buy a pass to Disneyland? Have you thought about how you're going to earn money to buy that pass for yourself? So let's talk about what kind of jobs you might want to have, because the first thing that my son thinks of, he does not think about getting a job for sure. That is not a priority for him. But we can make it a priority when we relate it to the things that are very important to him, like going to Disneyland. Then you move on to action steps. And the action steps piece are the piece that everybody forgets because they're only doing the person-centered planning as a tool to get to a budget amount and as a tool to get to your spending plan so that you can get big money. That's not why you do person-centered planning. You do person-centered planning to really figure out the actual needs of the individual and what their hopes and dreams are, how to support those hopes and dreams. They're the most important part of the self-determination program. And the fact that people are skipping this process makes my head want to explode. So the action steps are things like, okay, my son is interested in volunteering at a library. Who can help with that? So Michael will say, I'm willing to take Josh to go to my son goes to a library Monday through Friday. Every single day he goes to different libraries in LA County. He knows all of them and he knows what books and videos are at each different library. And so Michael went with him to the libraries and said, you know, Josh, he comes here all the time. Do you have a volunteer job for him? And lo and behold, the Marina Del Rey Library said, yeah, we do. We know our friends at the library. We get all these books donated and we need someone to put them on the shelf and we can teach him how to do it. So my son got a job. It was a volunteer job, but it was a job and it gave him good working skills. So everybody needs to take responsibility for every single goal. And you don't want to let anybody in the circle of support leave without taking responsibility for one of the goals, one of the hopes and dreams. And then finally, you have to do follow-up. You have to be showing up on a regular basis, having either the individual themselves or their parents or the facilitator going back to Michael and saying, Michael, how's it going with getting that volunteer job at a library? Report back. Some people have circle meetings all the time so that they're constantly checking in, and some people are just having one individual make the phone calls.
It's
And
unusual to do your entire person-centered plan in one meeting. It usually takes several meetings, and that's kind of an important thing to remember because for the individual, you have to have time to process the ideas in the first meeting so that you can come back in the second meeting and say, and reaffirm that, yes, this is still what I want, or say, this is kind of what I want, but not exactly what I want. And that's important too.
yeah, thank you.
We don't process at the same speed you process at. And like I remember my very first person-centered plan, it took like 3 or 4 meetings before we actually had a plan because I didn't even know who I was. And it took me time once they started asking me, who do you want to be? What do you want? It took me a long time to think that through and process that, especially since I was still, living in traditional, where I didn't really get to explore that. So like the next year will get even better because as you get to know who you are, you get better at telling other people who you are.
I love that. All right, next slide. I think this is yours, Tina.
This one is fine. It's important that you don't use templates. Don't use fill in the blank things. We tried that in the pilot project. It doesn't work because that makes us feel like you're sticking us in boxes. Templates are boxes. You may not think about it that way, but we're not supposed to fit in boxes. So give us a blank sheet of paper and let us decide who we are. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be really simple. In fact, sometimes better if it is. It doesn't even have to be written. It can be pictures if that's what the person's the most comfortable with. Person-centered plans are personalized and unique to the individual, and that is the most important thing to remember. It's about them. Photos, drawings, written descriptions can depict the person's hopes and dreams, but please remember hopes and dreams can be really, really, really big, but they can also be really, really, really small. And the big things and the small things are equally important. Because what might not seem big to you could very well be gigantic to the individual. In my very first plan, one of my goals was to be able to have ice cream at 10 o'clock at night, if that's what I wanted. That sounds like something small and stupid to most people, but I lived in boarding care where you didn't get to have a snack at 10 o'clock at night. So for me, that was big. It still matters to me. Strangely enough, I have my own kitchen and my own refrigerator. But you know what? If I want a snack at 10 o'clock, it makes me feel like I'm a real person. And that matters. The plan should reflect what that person wants for their life. You should not cast your own wants and dreams onto them. This is really hard for parents because parents envision what they want their child to become. But sometimes you have to allow them to flower and become. You can't cast your own desires on them. If you think about a child without a disability and you cast what you want on them, they leave. We don't have that choice. We're dependent on you. We can't rebel like our brothers. My brother walked away from the family and he never looked back. I wish I could have done that. I grew up in an abusive home. But you know what? I was dependent on the people that were abusing me. And I learned bad things from that. I learned to allow abuse later in life. And it wasn't until recently that I finally said, you know what? No more living caregivers for me because I get abused and I'm not doing that again. Listen to them. Listen to us. We know who we are. We're trying to tell you who we are. Don't tell me who I am. Let me tell you who I am. Sorry.
No, I always incredible. This is why Tina works for DVU. I want to talk from a parent's perspective. So Tina is a highly articulate person. You're getting so much love in the chat, Tina. Uh,
Am I? I'm
my
sorry, I just can't do the chat
good.
today. It's too much.
We'll download it for you later to get the love.
Thank you.
My son is not articulate like Tina. But I learned so much about my son from people like Tina. So I don't sit there and say, "Oh, well, Tina, you're nothing like my son. Like my son can't do anything." I never say that. I say what Tina says relates to my son too. My son just can't say it. My son wants to have choice and control over his life. He wants to direct things. So the other thing that I wanted to tell a little story about my son's first person center plan. So when he was 15 years old, we had started learning about person centered planning, and I thought it was amazing. This is 2 years after we got the self-determination law passed, but it had not gone into effect yet. And it took many years for that to happen, many years later. And so my husband and I paid out of pocket to hire an agency in our area who specializes in person-centered planning to come conduct the plan. And it was an amazing experience. It was our first experience. And sometimes my husband and I were very uncomfortable. And I should say that if you're a parent and at least at one point during the planning meeting, you're not uncomfortable, it means it's not an authentic plan. Okay, that was many double negatives. Let me try to say it positively. Every parent should have at least one moment in the person-centered planning meeting that they feel uncomfortable. Doesn't have to mean that there's anything negative. So I'll tell you the example was my son's dream was to go to Tokyo Disneyland. And so the people who were leading the plan went on this tangent about my son learning Japanese when my son could barely speak. And we're like, seriously, you're spending all this time talking about taking a class in Japanese and learning to speak Japanese. I mean, my husband and I were beside ourselves. And then we realized that it was a way to flush out what my son wanted. And it was really important that we let that happen. Sometimes the uncomfortableness is about different issues, but every parent should feel at some point, wow, I'm not in control right now. And that's okay. That's really okay. So out of this amazing person-centered planning meeting with the Japanese and everything, um, we got this incredible plan out of it. As I told you, my son loves Disneyland, and they created this Disneyland map. If you've ever been to Disneyland, you know that there's this fold-up map, and they created an identical fold-up map, and they had Tomorrowland and Frontierland and Fantasyland, and all the goals were associated with these different lands. And we were so impressed. Like, wow, this is the most beautiful plan ever. And do you know how many of my son's goals were implemented out of this plan? Zero. Zero. Because they didn't do the who's going to take the assignment and we're going to do follow up. It for them, it was like they did the plan and then they walked out the door. And so I learned a lot about this. And when Sally Burton Hoyle came in 3 years later and did my son's plan when he was leaving high school at 18, it was a one-page typed document with no photos. Doesn't mean you can't have photos. You can have photos and drawings if you want to, but my son can read. So it was just a typed document and it had the names of the follow-up and the dates by which they were supposed to do things. And every single goal in that plan got implemented. So do not get hoodwinked when you get an independent facilitator who says, let me show you these beautiful plans that I have done and how gorgeous they are. Because that's not the question you should be asking. The question should be, how many people who you have helped have met their goals? Like, what are the goals they're meeting and how has this worked? And tell me, are you using a template? Because I can tell you almost every independent facilitator I know uses a template. It's a problem. And they should not. It's like, well, this is the template I use. We can individualize it to you. No, I don't want a template. Do the pre-planning and then we'll figure out what the topics are going to be. So a lot of you are using IFs out there and be sure to ask these hard questions. Okay, next slide, please. Is this me? I can't remember. It's me. Okay. So the follow-up are the things that I've been talking about. So all of these meeting notes should be turned into a written plan with clear goals. And the person-centered plan is a guide for that individual's life. And we're saying it now in writing. Some goals need funding, some do not. So I don't want to hear parents saying, I don't want to put that in the PCCP because it doesn't cost any money. And this is all about getting money. No, it's not. Person-centered planning is about achieving people's hopes and dreams. And whether it's going to Tokyo Disneyland or whether it's being able to eat ice cream at 10 o'clock at night, they're all valid dreams.
And some of the things can be small things. Like if you want to save up for something, you don't think you can afford to. You don't have to save $50 a month. You can save $5 a month. Just takes you longer to reach your goal. But let us have goals.
So getting support. You want to, when we say support, we don't mean support like the actual support, like financial support. We mean individuals who are going to support people, organizations, whatever, who will support the person to be able to meet their goals. So that means that this plan becomes a document for that individual's life. And you should be sharing it, obviously, if you feel comfortable, the individual should be sharing it with their school teachers, their administrators, their therapists, their support staff, their service providers, their doctors. We shared my son's PCP with everybody in his life, including family members. And they all said to me, I learned so much about Josh in this process. So it is and it's a living document, right? And
Yes.
so you should make sure that you adjust the plan as needed. So it may be just like, oh, I didn't even know I wanted something. So now let's add that to the plan. Or it's like, my needs have changed. Like now I'm sick. And so because I'm sick, I want to put as a goal in my plan that I am, supported at night because I'm worried about my health. Like whatever it is, nobody's life is static, whether you have a disability or not. Your life is not static. Your life changes all the time. And sometimes it's you that are changing, and sometimes it's the world around you that changes. But it should be a living document that changes all the time.
And it should also include things that are important that you might not like think are important. Like it should have a list of your doctors, because if something goes wrong and your house burns down, or you have to get away from your house because something bad has happened and you don't have a way to find that information because your phone blew up, if you have your doctors in your person-centered plan with their information, and you have the information that's on your health cards, on your insurance cards, in your plan, and something bad happens, like in Los Angeles when people's houses burned down, you can go to your regional center and say, I need a copy of my plan. My house burned down and I don't have my medical cards.
Mm.
I've had to do that before. Not because my house burned down, but because my personal life blew up and I had to run away from home to get away from being abused. And so I left everything behind. The only thing I took with me was the Think Outside the Box book, because that was my lifeline. That was how I was going to restart. And that was the only thing I took with me. I didn't even take my dog. I just left. And so like, make sure you have those things in your plan, because you don't know when an earthquake's going to happen and swallow your house, or a fire's going to happen and you're going to lose everything. Make sure you protect those important things and make sure you update them every year.
Wonderful. All right, next slide. This is you, Tina.
Okay, the difference between the person-centered plan and the IPP. This is something people don't always understand. A person-centered plan is conducted by the person and by the facilitator that they choose. The IPP is conducted by the regional center and the service coordinator, and you don't get a choice in that. The person-centered plan is about hopes and dreams, but the IPP is about outcomes related to your disability. That's important because the person-centered plan doesn't always have to be about your disability. It can be about who you are. It can be about what you want. It doesn't have to focus on the brokenness in you. It can focus on the beauty in you. Your person-centered plan can include goals that make you happy, but your IPP is based on guidelines determined by the state. The person-centered plan helps to inform the IPP, and the IPP uses a required IPP template, which is part of why we don't use templates in the person-centered plan. It's just better to think outside the box if you don't use a template.
So let's go to the next slide, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because we did a whole presentation on this back in February. But just a reminder that for those people who are not yet in the self-determination program, there is actually funding for you to hire a person-centered planner or a facilitator to help you do your person-centered plans and to help you create your budget and spending plan. Once you're in the program, and I saw that there was a question by Jordan in the chat about how you get funding for facilitators once you're in the program, you have to write that into your spending plan. So once you're in, and if you want a facilitator to lead your planning, which I highly recommend, you should have a line item for that person. All right, so before we go to our final slide, because I'm realizing how late it is, and we're sorry because we know we have a ton of questions. You're about to see a video of my son's person-centered plan, And it's just a 1 minute snippet. I think we met for about an hour and a half. Wait, don't go yet. Okay, good. Um, we met for about an hour and a half. And so we had probably, at this point, we'd been meeting for about 45 minutes, and my son had checked out completely, wasn't answering questions or was being very echolalic. And so Sally, in her incredible wisdom, got him standing up and helping to lead the plan himself. So go ahead and press play.
And dancing.
Yeah. I hear. If you don't think so.
Dancing.
Thank you. Why did I not put you to work doing this earlier? Okay, number 3. Number 3.
All right. And then number 3.
All right. What's number 3 fun things you
What's
started
number
doing?
3 fun things that I like doing? What's number 3 that I like doing?
Okay.
What's number 3 that I like doing?
What do you like to do, Bud? Where do you like to go with Marlon?
Well, would I like to go with Marlon? I like to go to the Manhattan Beach Driveway.
Oh,
Okay,
perfect.
nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I won't go home.
Joshua, is there anything you like to do on Mondays?
I just thought of this earlier. Thank you, Lori, for. Okay.
Just saying.
Okay, so just here, go to the next slide. So just a little explanation that the person who sort of shouted out, "Hey, bud, what do you like to do with Marlon?" That's a way to prompt the person if they're not able to answer the questions. But it's really important you give them a chance. My son in particular has language processing disabilities. And so sometimes it takes him a while to understand what's being said to him and then be able to get it from his brain to his mouth to give an answer. But then you heard another individual immediately ask him a question like, "Hey, what do you like to do on Mondays?" It's like give the person a chance to finish before you start asking more questions. And
We need time to process.
yeah. And you notice
Yes, I'll be right back. I have to use the bathroom.
go right ahead. You know that Sally asked him a question and then was quiet. And so it's so important that you give people a chance to process things. So finally, we want to give you lots more information. So first of all, we have our SDP Resource Center that you can find some of this information out online. And then we also have this book that we have talked about, the Think Outside the Box book, which is a guide, everything you really need to know about the SDP. It is going to get updated. We need to really wait until all these new changes that were just announced yesterday happen. And we also have another book. The Profiles in Self-Determination is actually not on Amazon. So Think Outside the Box you can get on Amazon, but Profiles in Self-Determination, I believe you have to order through our website, but
Judy,
yeah.
it's on Amazon.
Oh, yeah. Yay. See, I don't even know the details. So you can get them both on Amazon. Thank you, Kaylee. All right, final slide, I think is just about asking questions. All right, so we can stop sharing the screen and let us
Karen's had her hand up for a long time.
go ahead, Karen.
Hi. A lot of these things, it's good to go through the outside the box because that's why we joined self-determination 6 years ago, was because of that's what my daughter needed because anything else did not work for her. She's nonverbal, but she uses an AAC. And that is kind of one of the things I still have difficulty with is what I loved about self-determination, it really helped with us getting, people who've worked with her in the past to continue to work with her in facilitating her communication and building it. And they did a great job, but now we're getting her out in the social and vocational areas more, and we need a facilitator there. And for example, one of the questions I have and how to put it on the spending plan is we have somebody who's helped train the staff, but now I have other clients because I'm an independent facilitator as well. I have other clients that we use this person with on their plans, but we want to vendorize her, but she's not. We have a certification for her because she's not a speech therapist to facilitate in a program or in a vocational area, um, to help train other people to support her. So I'm finding it very difficult with vendorizing somebody. So I was wondering, is there a recommendation? Maybe they get person-centered plan training. Are they able to vendorize through that besides an IF?
Um, so the person-centered planning training is basically the same thing as independent facilitator training. And there are various groups that are doing IF trainings around the state. Personally, based on where I'm seeing how a lot of independent facilitators, the newer ones, are working, I think there's a lot better training that needs to happen.
Mm,
My feeling is right now, nobody is required to go through like official training. So if it's just somebody to lead person-centered planning, I think that they don't have to know that much about the self-determination program. They have to know the individual and have to understand person-centered principles.
yeah, that's what I wanted them to do. And
Yeah,
that's why I was like, if you get vendorized, you can work with me because I want you to do what we've been doing with these
right,
people. So yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
There's a bunch of questions in the chat, and I'm gonna try to
There's also one more hand raised, so
right.
we've got a time minutes.
Yeah, so let me try to get out a bunch of questions because I know we only have 5 minutes. First of all, there was a question about the initial documents, the trailer bill language that we were talking about at the beginning, and I just threw that into the chat, the PDF of that in the chat, so people can go download that and so they can see this. People are asking when it becomes effective, and there's going to be various dates involved. If basically most of it becomes effective on July 1st next week, but there needs to be clear directions. They're called directives sent from DDS to the regional centers on how this is going to work. And so that's going to take a few months if I had to have a guess. So, okay, so I'm just looking at a bunch of other questions. Some people are saying it's taking a lot of time for the regional center to get back to them on things like the budget. So whenever I hear these concerns where it's taking them a long time to hear back from their regional center, I start saying you should copy the ombudsperson's office. And you should be copying the regional center, your service coordinator's manager, and if you have to, copy the executive director as well. So it's like we didn't do a PCP meeting with your regional center. That is correct. You do not do a person-centered planning meeting with your regional center. That meeting is called the individual program plan meeting or the IPP meeting. Your person-centered plan is separate, and you do that first before you have your IPP. And then what comes out of your PCP informs the individual program plan. People are asking if they get paid. Yes, please look at our previous webinar. Somebody was asking whether they should wait to get the book, think outside the book until it's updated. If you want to go into the program right now, go and get the book now, because it could take us 6 months to update it, because it could take 6 months for all the directives to come out on it. And we want to wait till they're all done before we don't want to have to keep updating it. you should know that many regional center local volunteer advisory committees have purchased large amounts of books, and you can often get one for free from your local regional center. So definitely inquire about that. Somebody was asking if the IPP is the same as the IF. No, it is very different. The IPP is what we've been talking about. It is the plan that you have for your life. An IF is an independent facilitator, and the IF helps facilitate these kinds of things and helps the individual with many things, especially person-centered planning. And somebody's asking when we're going to do an advanced independent facilitator course. Not right now, maybe someday. It is something that I'm interested in making happen. I just need to clone myself because I do not have time. Or maybe we could stop cutting we could stop cutting the DDS budget, and maybe I'd have time to do other things besides advocacy. Okay, so Jordan, you will get the last question because we took longer than we thought we would with this presentation. We were so sorry, but we
Well,
promise.
thank you for giving me the last question. So, and I don't think you touched on it, and maybe that's a topic for part two. What if you're having a minor, and I'm working with, or a minor, or somebody like the last person mentioned uses an argumentative and alternative communication, and we know that young children who use that can be very slow, and they can only hit a word here like "I want ice cream." All they're saying, because I'm using the other person's example, and that's all they're hitting. But how do you do a PCP for a minor? Is it, say, we know your son is more older and is in high school, but if you have a 4 or 5-year-old, 6-year-old, maybe they're not communicating. Does the parent, does Judy Marks run it? Does Daddy run it? Does Grandpa, who leads, who actually says this is what the goals are for the child?
Phenomenal question, and it is a giant hole that we forgot to fill in this presentation, and we will make sure that we have a talking point on this. So generally what we say is that when it's a child under the age of 10, maybe even under the age of 13, it is really a family-centered plan. Because think about it, if you have a child without a disability who's 5 years old, they're generally not making their own choices every day in their lives. So you have to think of what is the neurotypical peer of a 5-year-old? Yeah, usually it's about the family, not about the individual. But as they get older, as they get into their teenage years, they should be asked to direct parts of their plan as much as possible. And certainly when they're an adult, they should be directing their own plan. And sometimes it's hard. We admit it. We know that there are individuals that it is really hard. But that is why you need to have a person who's helping you with your planning, who knows that individual and understands whether it's augmentative or alternative communication, or they understand this individual, maybe they don't even type to communicate, maybe they point at things, or maybe they grunt, or they use some sort of their own sign language. So that's why it's critically important. So I completely apologize that our presentation took so long, but it was obviously important information to get out. And we also got a little waylaid by the beginning because we had to update you all on the budget and everything. So we promise we will be back in a month. Just quick aside, in 2 weeks, we're having our SDP Connect, and it relates to this topic. Our SDP Connect in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, will be about the new IPP template. So the IPP process has a new way of working with your regional centers. And for those of you who haven't experienced it, it is very different. And even for those of you like Tina and me who have, it's not working well. So we are having a person from DDS speak at the event, Ernie Cruz, who created this new template with a lot of input, and he's going to explain it to you and how it relates to the self-determination program.
I'm gonna be able to ask him questions.
Yes, we are all going to be able to ask him questions. So we hope you'll join us, mostly because it directly relates to this topic. So we're sorry that we went 2 minutes over. Thank you to our interpreters for being there for the 2 minutes. And we will see all of you in 2 weeks at our SDP Connect. Bye, everybody.